listeners. I'm honored to have Mariah McKay here today.
My pleasure. I'm excited to share.
She's coming from, well, she's calling in from Haystack Heights in Spokane, Washington. It's a co-housing facility that she successfully co-founded some time ago. And in this episode, we're going to learn what co-housing is. We're going to talk a lot about it, and it's something that has come to my attention, and I am super excited to learn more of it. I think it's going to be of utmost interest now and into the future to build, I want to use the word anti-fragile communities and strong communities and, strong individuals and healthy people. So yes, for all my listeners, if you value your time and your health and your finances even, I think that co-housing could be a really cool prospect for many people. And I just want to get the word out and learn more about it and see, how it could become more a part of many people's lives. I understand that you've not only founded a co-housing place, but you also have lived there for quite some time. So maybe just tell me a little bit about where you're coming from and where you are today and how you are.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a pretty typical majority white, middle class Christian suburb of my mid-sized city in the northwestern US, and it was pretty isolating. We had to drive across town for childcare. My cousins lived in a different part of town. There were some kids on the block, but it wasn't really welcomed for us to go over spontaneously. I remember dropping by the neighbor kids one day, and the mom looked kind of quizzically like, "What are you doing on my front porch?"
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of waspy, the long and short of it. And my mother was a hardworking single mom who was a teacher working full time. And there was only one of her, and my brother and I were very active, and we needed a lot of rides to a lot of activities. We did not live in a walkable neighborhood, and she was stretched pretty thin to keep up with us. And so there just wasn't a lot of collaboration among households on our block growing up. And I didn't want to raise kids in that kind of format because I didn't enjoy that aspect of it as a child myself. And then, long story short, I became a community organizer through a series of life events and had a chance to go door to door in neighborhoods and talk with people about life struggles, access to healthcare, access to green spaces, all kinds of social issues, concerns about personal security in an urban neighborhood. And people were quite afraid of their neighbors. And I would go and talk to those same neighbors, and they'd be quite friendly. And so the perception and the reality didn't match up. People were not connecting with each other. And there's just a real sense of loss for how things were perceived to be versus what they could be. And there's just something deeply dysfunctional. I remember one day knocking on the door of a woman who revealed that she was dying of brain cancer. And she was by herself in this big house. And she was extremely lonely, and nobody was there to spend the last moments of her life with her. It was really striking. And so a couple of years later, on my honeymoon, my husband and I were in Belize, which is a very friendly, hyper-local country that has a lot of neighborhood pride. And we realized, it's time for us to use our skills to convene a community. And we want to bring co-housing to our city, Spokane, Washington. There's about 200 or so take-or minus or plus villages of co-housing across the United States today. And we wanted one in our region. There's 24 or so on the other side of the state here in Washington. Washington and Colorado and California and a couple of other states have a high density of co-housing. But there's no reason we can't have more of it. There's definitely more people who want to live in co-housing than there are co-housings built. So co-housing is a growing movement, but there's also some economic challenges for people making projects pencil with the cost of housing and the cost of construction. So we're just thankful that we bit the bullet and went for it and succeeded. Took us 5 years from concept to completion to move in. And we've been living here for the last 5 years and loving it, growing alongside our neighbors.
A few things come up for me, but I think the first thing that we should do is define co-housing. If you could help us do that, and then define how your co-housing facility might be fitting in that definition, but also customizing it or expanding on the definition in ways that you guys wanted it.
Sure. So, co-housing at its core is several households coming together to co-locate their private residences and share ample common facilities in addition to their own private homes. And there's a lot of varieties of co-housing. You can build co-housing from scratch. So new build co-housing is the most typical type of co-housing. But there's also retrofit co-housing where people buy houses along a block and then maybe designate one house for the community house. And there's, different types of age groupings of co-housing. So you can have senior co-housing or intergenerational co-housing. I live in a multi-generational community, and we did a combination of incorporating an existing building and then building 4 new buildings. But most co-housing is built from the ground up because there's pretty significant challenges to retrofitting a built environment that wasn't designed for community. What we currently optimize for in the housing market by default is privacy and isolation. Those two things do come together in a lot of ways. And so co-housing is not where people do income sharing necessarily. People own their own homes, and they can sell that home just like they would any other real estate asset that they're living in. And our co-housing community is a classic co-housing project. Things that make us a little bit different are that we have 39 households, which is sort of the upper recommended limit for communities of our type. But we've fit our size very well and are happy with the number of people we have living on site together here. And we share 100% of our storage. That's another unique feature of Haystack Heights, whereas a lot of co-housing communities will have private storage lockers in their common storage facility. So we're pretty representative of co-housing in America today.
Your background is much more kind of political and activist, and so when did you come across co-housing in your background, and like how did you learn about it? Like it probably has been part of your vocabulary and like mental awareness, maybe longer than a lot of people like myself. How did you come to know of it, and then did it develop in a way that like it became more possible to you or more interesting to you? Like you mentioned your honeymoon, but yeah, tell me about your relationship with co-housing. And
so prior to making the decision to be all in and go for it, I first learned about co-housing, and that was 2015, I believe. In 2012, I was living with my partner in Olympia, Washington, after having finished working in the legislature for a session, and I was working as a community organizer. And my now husband had friends who lived in the Olympia co-housing community there. And so we went and we shared dinner with them one evening. And we liked the experience. It seemed like a really great way to go. And as community organizers, of course, we were interested in different types of communities and formats for community, because I like to say, in order to do community organizing, you have to have a community to organize. There's a difference between community building and community organizing. And you can't organize a community if it doesn't exist. Duh. Right? So a lot of community organizers have to build community before they can then help that community discern its common cause and work towards a political goal. So any example of a vibrant community is interesting to an organizer. It takes trust to build coalition and alliance, and co-housing communities create that in spades.
Let's share with the listeners like where you are in your Haystack Heights life now. Like, you've told me already that it took about 5 years to get it from concept to completion, and you've been living in Haystack Heights 4 to 5 years. What's it like living there after that good amount of time, of kicking the tires, sort of the whole living situation? Like, what is it like today now that the the building is behind you and now you get to live there? What's it like?
Oof. It's a great payout. It is everything we hoped it would be. And the really cool thing about co-housing is it just keeps getting better with time. So every year we've finished another project. We have a new neighbor move in. People are more experienced with how they conduct themselves in meetings. People have things better organized. People have more capacity to lean into the creative side of village life. So it just keeps getting better and better over time as the layers add up and enrich each other. So I live in the smallest of the new built homes that we constructed. I'm in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 864 square foot flat. And we have very large windows, so the light penetrates all the way into the center of the home. In co-housing, we tend to put our kitchens towards the front of the house, so you can look out your front window as you're washing dishes or preparing a meal and see who's arriving on site, who's going to the common house for dinner, which children are out and available to play with. And our house is compact, easy to clean. A lot of things that you would typically have in a garage, we have in a shared storage facility. And so I know we're often returning dishes to the common house because we can, instead of dining in the common house, we can order a takeout plate and bring a homemade meal home to share in our private, kitchen. If we so desire, if someone's not feeling well or, for whatever reason, we aren't feeling social that night. And so we kind of have a running errands bag of things to go get from storage or return to storage or returning Tupperware to the common house. And we walk quite a lot. We live on a 3-acre site. So we were able to secure an entire city block, which is fantastic. We have a mix of underground parking for 16 vehicles and I think another 12 carport spots. And then the remainder of us choose to park on the street. It's much more affordable. There's plenty of street parking in our neighborhood where we are. And we all walk into our private homes. So people who purchased garages, those garages are not attached to their private unit. That also encourages people to get out into the middle of the village and walk around and greet each other. And we intentionally locate buildings close enough so that you could be on your front porch and say hello to someone passing by. So you're not awkwardly yelling or having to raise your voice to engage somebody. But there's also just enough separation that if you're on your front porch with a guest, for example, people know not to interrupt you then. And there's a lot of other ways that co-housers communicate whether or not they want visitors. If people are done for the day or don't want someone to stop by, you just close your blinds and you get privacy. So you have as much privacy as you want in a co-housing community. All the activities for the vast majority of things are all opt-in. There's very little things that you're compelled or required to do. People kind of perceive that in a community you'd have to have a rule book this thick to govern how people engage with each other, and that's definitely not the best approach for how to be successful in a really involved neighborhood environment like this. So I'm just kind of throwing out some different aspects of life here, and you can seize on whichever are most interesting to you, but there's definitely a lot of subtleties to the lifestyle that make it so special.
Yeah, you got to a question I have, and it's around yeah, on a practical standpoint, I want to know what is required. So like it's kind of, if someone is very interested, they could get a sense of how much time it takes to be there. Um, and then the other side is like, well, if everything's required, then it doesn't become fun. So yeah.
Like I said, very little is required. I can count the requirements on one hand, quite honestly. So the first and most important requirement is that you can own your own private home. That's, um, co-housing is not funded by grants. There's no foundations that are investing in middle class co-housing. And everyone here is able to privately afford, on some level, their own home. There were a few households that received some financial help from other households in the community. But by and large, people needed to be able to buy a newly built condo in order to pay for their share of building the community. So that's number one. Number two, you have to be able to afford your own HOA dues, right? That's just, again, chipping into all of our common expenses. HOA dues are not onerous here. They're pretty on par to what people would typically pay in an HOA, but we get a lot more bang for the buck because of the way that we buy things together and the way that we've structured utilities and things of that nature. Beyond that, we do have a participation agreement where every member is expected to contribute about 12 hours a month to the community in terms of helping with neighborhood cleanup days or cleaning meals, so on and so forth. Now, there's no minder going around clocking everyone in and out. There's no record book. It's an on your honor system. And we've found that different people have different strengths, abilities, capacities to engage. Some people contribute way more than that. Some people, for life circumstances, are contributing a little bit less. But it all works out in the end. And if people have concerns about someone's participation, they go and speak to them directly about that. And we have a membership team that helps to ensure that everyone has lots of opportunities to be engaged. And overall, that seems to work really well. In every community, there's always going to be one person who's going to be the least involved. And no matter how involved everyone is. And so people have to make their peace with that. And there's going to be, in co-housing, we attract people who are very engaged. And so the amount of leadership and contribution shared among our members is really astounding. And we do a lot of appreciation for each other for those efforts. So it creates sort of an incentive and a feed forward cycle. So the vast majority of us are contributing way more than 12 hours and not even noticing because we want to be doing the things that we're doing for our neighbors. And then we had an entirely voluntary meal system for cooking shared community meals. And we did ask at one point for everyone to cook at least 2 meals a year for the whole neighborhood. And they didn't have to cook them from scratch. They could, order pizza or cater or have a guest chef come and cook for them or trade favors with another neighbor to take their cooking shift if they wanted to. So that encouraged more people to get involved in organizing meals than we had previously. So not everybody actually fulfills that request, but most people do now. And so we are actually able to offer 3 shared meals every week. Sunday, Monday, and Thursday. We can count on those dinners to be on the calendar. And so people who are cooking for their families at home know they only have to menu plan for the other days of the week. And oftentimes we'll have additional meals on top of those 3 bedrock meals. So we average anywhere between 3 to 5 meals a week here at Haystack Heights. So a lot of things that you would have to have a meeting for, you can just quickly check in with someone over dinner, and then you don't have to have a meeting for it. So we're really all about keeping communications clear, concise, to the topic, all of that kind of good stuff. There's a lot of self-facilitation that people learn how to do in co-housing to live together successfully and harmoniously.
Yeah, the parts that really stick out for me as like so beneficial as I've learned about it a little bit is the not having to cook as much as someone all on their own.
So much more efficient, so much better, fresher, more from the garden, less expensive. It's really a triple win.
Yeah, I mean, I constantly find myself like at the sink full of dishes, and like, maybe my wife's sick or something, or I'm sick, and it's like my son needs help and the dishes need doing, and it's just like there's not a lot of us to do this right now until my son's older to do it. So I wonder, what are some benefits to co-housing for maybe a younger slice of the population? Like, let's think about the benefits for both young parents, but also maybe young people that totally have no kids. But like, how would you describe the benefits to that audience?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's start with parents. That's really the heart of co-housing is the middle-aged families that are raising kids here. I built this village to be able to raise a child here, and am happy to say that that happened 5 months ago. Gave birth to my daughter, my first and likely my only. An older mom because I took the time to build the village, so I knew I would have it. But that strategy has really paid off, and my daughter won't have that single kid stereotype of not having a lot of socialization, because she has 15 other kids in this community of all ages that regularly get to play with each other. There's just built-in play dates. You just tumble out the front door and kids are playing catch on the common green, or basketball on the basketball court, or foursquare, or we have a whole kids corner with a fort and a slide and a corn maze and crops that the kids are tending to, and we have like a sandbox in the middle of the community and a sensory path that kids love to circumnavigate and hop, skip, and jump around on. We have a 1 acre urban organic farm that kids can run around and play hide and go seek and explore in. They love to run their scooters up and down the sidewalks like a roller coaster ride. The kids are always the kids are the best co-housers among us. They were the first to get comfortable in the shared environment because they're so flexible and it's all they ever knew. So they have no hesitation to go up to other people's houses and ask for a treat or some help, or just to chit chat, honestly. But we have parents who help carpool kids to school. We have non-parents who help drive kids to activities and to school, pick them up from school. For a while, we had an after-school shared daycare in the common house where a couple of kids would do like a food craft and then eat it as a snack while their parents were still getting off work. We actually have a kids' room in our common house that's full of toys and crash pads, and it has a cushioned floor, and kids love building forts in there and playing dress up. We actually have a toy library, so every couple of months a parent will take out a new tub of toys and swap them for some of the toys that have been in there for a while. So it's kind of a rotating library of fresh things to play with, but not too many to be overwhelming. It's a really sweet environment. The kids' room is adjacent to the dining hall, so while we're eating dinner, when the kids are ready to take off and burn calories, they go to the kids' room, and mom and dad can finish their meal at the table and have an adult conversation with their neighbors, but still be able to hear their child if they need help and be within safe distance to respond. Gosh, I mean, I really could go on. People know that this is possible. So why isn't it happening more often in our lives is really an important question to answer in this conversation, because it is possible and it is worthwhile. It is worth the effort of sitting through the meetings to plan the community and taking the risk to put in, 20% of your down payment before you have a real house to move into, to pay for all the costs of development. I'm just here to say it is worth it. There is an other end of that. might take 5 years to build, but I could live here for 50 years. So that's a 10x return. It's pretty great. Um, and it's a gift that keeps growing and giving. Co-housing changes everyone's life who lives in it. It's really, I mean, I'll let you ask me some more questions, but you move into a community thinking it's going to benefit you, and it certainly does, but not always in the ways that you guess. You don't go into co-housing think I'm here to become a better person, but that's what ends up happening. You give opportunities to help other people and to share and create good memories together, but you also become a better person.
For anyone interested, what might you recommend them do to go learn more about it? I know there's a lot of organizations like in California and nationwide. I've signed up as like a seeker to on one of the sites as like a profile. Both what should they do to learn more, but also what can they do to, like, if they're serious about it, what should they do?
Just take a few minutes to visit the Cohousing Association of America's website. They have a map of co-housing. See where the co-housing communities are nearest to where you currently live, and then see if you can reach out to those communities. Some communities will host people for lunch or for a tour if you request one. Other communities are less interested in educating people who are newer to co-housing, but it's worth an ask. Our community definitely accommodates people and is offering scheduled tours all the time by request. And then I would recommend, as a second step, if you like what you see, buy the book Creating Cohousing. It's one of a few seminal works on how to develop these communities in America. It's a very easy and inspiring, straightforward read. And it just it sounds a little too good to be true, but you put one foot in front of the next and see it through, conflict that might arise around miscommunications about expectations or, the sequencing of steps. If you can see it through those moments, you will create a really incredible environment for yourself and your family, if that's what you want. Some people don't want to live in co-housing, and that's fine. There's a whole private market of housing out there for people who want to live conventionally. But I think with the way the world is going, more and more people are recognizing the benefit of social support and interaction and collaboration, materially, emotionally, and otherwise.
On a previous call, you told me that introverts actually have a very comfortable space in this co-housing. Tell me about how that's possible and how are introverts feeling and participating. And to go along with what you talked about prior, there's always maybe the person that participates the least. Like, is that welcome and fine in the community? And like, I'd imagine a healthy community just kind of accepts people how they are to an extent, but also leaves the door open for them to hang out if they want to. So how is it an introvert's paradise, like you told me before?
Well, yes, the vast majority of people in co-housing tend towards introversion, which is counterintuitive. And the reason for that is introverts, it's not that they don't have social needs at all. It's that they're more particular about how they get them met. So it's easier to socialize with someone that you know well versus to socialize with a perfect stranger, right? And in co-housing, everybody actually knows each other. So they know their audience. So they have more information with which to navigate that individual. So the interactions tend to produce less anxiety because people have a higher degree of familiarity. Another thing that's great for introverts in co-housing is the number of activities. So if something doesn't fit with your schedule, you can just catch the next party, the next, potluck, the next whatever it is. So that makes it easier to socialize. You don't have to feel a lot of pressure because on a rare blue moon, now there's this cool thing happening and you have a conflict and you have to, clear your schedule so you don't miss out. That you don't have to worry about that in co-housing. You can just say no and you know that you're going to have another opportunity and invitation later on. So that really takes the pressure off. Another thing is just the ease of ducking in and ducking out. If you think about it, a lot of outings that we schedule in our recreational lives, you have to buy a ticket. You have to find parking. You have to navigate traffic. You have to drive across the city. The weather might be bad, and all these things could put a wrench in your plans to go to the thing and enjoy yourself. In co-housing, you don't have to pay for parking. You walk, 20 feet this way or 50 feet that way. If the weather is bad, and you didn't bring your coat, you can just run home and grab it. It's just, there's a lot less risk involved in socializing in co-housing. So when introverts are trying something on for size, they know that they can retreat back to their private home and, leave at any moment if they feel tired, if the vibe is off, whatever. It's a lot safer of an environment for introverts to share the one-on-one conversations that they really excel in and to have meaningful, deep relationships with people. And smart introverts know that, and they seek co-housing out because of it.
What came up for me is I had this idea that is rather simple, and it's like in any kind of housing or complex, like what if everyone just knew each other's name?
That would be a great first step, but if you're not sharing an intention to build community, oftentimes you'll just get stuck at that first step. And, if you know 30 people's names, but if you don't know anything else about them, that doesn't really facilitate collaboration in the way that happens naturally in co-housing. So just one example of getting to know each other on a deeper level, we know our, basic bios. We share meals with people on a regular basis and know what's currently happening in their lives, not just their historic background or their profile. We are there during life's peaks and valleys. So we know who's recovering from surgery. We know who just had a new grandchild come into their family. It's just the texture of people's lives is so much deeper than obviously their name. But we go even deeper than that. We go into the emotional side of people's way of being in the world. So in our community, one couple decided to host an Enneagram discussion group to learn about everyone's Enneagram types. So it's a kind of a personality evaluation and navigation system. And that was so popular. Now 80% of our community has just voluntarily joined an Enneagram kind of workshop group. And so now people can relate to each other through that framework. So we can say, oh, so-and-so, they're just being an 8, or so-and-so, that's their 4 nature coming out. The Enneagrams are designated by numbers. And people know what that means, and it helps lighten up, behaviors that might be a sticking point if you didn't understand what was going on for that person. So it really increases tolerance and compassion among neighbors as well, because everyone knows that we're all trying to be better. We're all on a growth path, and different people are going to need different things to grow. And so knowing that your neighbors know your struggle and know where your weaknesses are and where your strengths are is just such a humanizing way to be more fully in community.
I mean, there's a few things that maybe I left out to try and sync up on this topic more, but the idea of knowing someone's name is kind of like a gateway to relationship. And just prior in the interview, you were kind of discussing your upbringing and how it's disjointed as a community, and people don't feel safe to share amongst one another. So it's almost like I want to define what's wrong with general American domestic life in terms of it is, I mean, it can be unsafe, and there are unsafe neighborhoods and circumstances and things. So there are barriers to much of the population to open up.
What is generally wrong? It's an overemphasis on the myth of the, all capable individual. That is just not realistic. Like, even if you were to go door to door and figure out everyone's first name in your neighborhood, that's a lovely first step and gesture. But if everyone else in the neighborhood isn't also learning each other's first names, then only one person knows the first names, and that puts all the pressure on that one individual to try to build common cause and collaboration amongst all these other households, and that's not sustainable. Community building takes a lot of work, and if you, it's not about one individual leader. It's about a collective desire to engage with each other in a certain kind of way. And that's what makes for a vibrant community culture. It's just the myth of the individual. Like, you break a leg, you need some help. And if you can't have the money to like pay someone to help you, then you're SOL, and you're stressed out at work and you're not sleeping, and it's a snowball effect in your life. I think Americans are just we valorize that kind of no pain, no gain attitude, and it's a very stereotypically masculine way of being in the world, and it doesn't have to be that way, folks. Like, that's not how we evolved as a species. That's not even how we lived earlier on, a couple centuries ago. Surviving off of the land. So it's the overemphasis on the all-powerful individual, that you're invulnerable to the weather and you're invulnerable to the failings of your own body and the economic system just by hoarding wealth and being on your own little castle island. It's really it's kind of a sickness, honestly, taken to its logical extreme. There's some beautiful things about agency and being able to act as an individual and respecting the autonomy and worthiness of every individual, as communities have to meet in the middle to live together. But our culture just takes it way too far. And then what was the second aspect of your question?
For me, it seems like there are families that do work, and there are like structures and social networks that do work out in the world. Otherwise, it would kind of just be far worse than what it is. Like, there's fortunate individuals that find themselves in a network of a family or even friends that have a lot of support. But I'm like optimistically trying to find like a way in which co-housing could be created for those who don't have the financial means to do it. So you wanted to share about how some people did get support to be in the co-housing, like what's available for that population of people. Is there anything that's promising, or does it need a lot of work in that area to like help individuals?
Well, I think co-living is not co-housing, but co-living is a great strategy for people to be able to save and build some modicum of savings to get closer to private home ownership. You could also have co-living inside of co-housing, where people who can't afford their own home maybe team up, so like two single moms with one kid each could do really well purchasing one of our townhomes in our community, for example. And if they split those costs, that's incredibly affordable. So there's a lot of different ways to cut costs and do some house hacking in order to afford housing over time. But I don't personally trust our federal government to miraculously start investing in public housing again to offset the private market costs of construction and materials and labor. There's no money raining down from the sky. Like, we have to turn to each other to figure out how to reduce expenses. Car sharing, sharing childcare. These are all very practical ways in which to change the financial trajectory of your life. One woman wrote down everything she saved money on in co-housing over the course of a year, and she said you can save between $30,000 to $40,000 a year living in co-housing, depending on your consumption lifestyle and how comfortable you are receiving shared favors from neighbors. We built an in-home shared gym, for example, so people quit their gym memberships that were very expensive. People have shared, kayaks and canoes and stand-up paddle boards that they loan out to their neighbors. So you don't have to rent those things. Same with, you don't have to rent ski equipment when you go up to the mountain, and you can carpool to get there. So you save on a tank of gas, and it just goes on and on. A couple households have lake cabins. And so instead of renting an Airbnb for your once a year vacation or whatever, however often you're vacationing, you can borrow the neighbor's lake house and, do, some tidying around their place or give them a gift instead of $1,000 rental bill, right?
Is there anything up front with the cost that is more affordable in like compared to other townhomes, or is it pretty much at market? Or
when we moved in, our spaces per square foot were comparable to other new built real estate in our city, but we got a lot more for it. So, getting the sauna and the greenhouse and the wood shop and the music room and the co-working space and the dining hall and the lounge and the shared laundry and 4 guest beds that we could check out on a calendar whenever our families come to visit. And the kids' room and and our community has the shared amenities for 39 households that would typically be shared among 360 apartments. Yeah. So we're very rich in what we get for what we invest here. So you get a scale of efficiency in every interaction, every meal that's shared. There's a scale of efficiency, and that adds up over time.
Another part that was super interesting about your place is that it's near downtown, or it's in downtown, and it's like has this, urban quality, but also it's accessible to all of these things. And as I considered it, it's almost like placing if you were to call the facility you live in like a system, it's right up against all these other systems, and they all get to work together in this really nice way, and it just feels like a good place to put co-housing. Can you describe where it is and how people utilize the downtown, and how maybe the downtown interacts back to you guys and vice versa?
Yeah. So we are a 7-minute bike ride from our city's Opera House, which is located in the center of our urban metro region. And we have pretty good bike lanes to get there. So Washington State is a relatively better than average American state in terms of bicycle infrastructure. I think Spokane has been upgraded from a bronze to a silver city for the League of American Cyclists in terms of our infrastructure. We have 150 bicycles in storage for, because some people have multiple bikes, like they'll have a road bike and a mountain bike and, commuter bike. And people who weren't really into biking are now more comfortable borrowing a bike from our community bike library. And people who are more experienced cyclers will bike pool with people to destinations downtown. So people have gotten drawn into cycling by living here. We also have a dedicated bike mechanic corner, so it's easier to maintain your own bike. Again, saving money on the annual tune-up. Taking your bike into the shop can cost $70 or $80. And we have bike mechanics in the community who that's the way they like to contribute. And we are in I like to call us interurban instead of, because we're not far out enough to be in a suburb, but we're not in the urban core either. And we're in a historic neighborhood that many decades ago was redlined. So there was a lot of racist housing policies where banks wouldn't loan to communities that were associated with communities of color. And so there is a cycle of renewal and gentrification that is occurring in our neighborhood. And that was partly the reason why this lot was not developed for decades and decades, because it was historically redlined in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s. but also because the site that we're on is really rocky, so it wasn't economical to develop housing here for a long, long time. And we had to spend a lot of money chipping away rock to get the underlayment of the utilities put in place. So anyway, we are at the southern tip of economic zone called the University District. And so there's a vision for urban villages in this University District master plan. And Haystack Heights Cohousing is a great actualization of that kind of vision. So we do have people who are professors and university employees living and working here and then commuting to the nearby institutions of higher education. I could continue to elaborate on that, but I think it gives you a general idea of how we're really integrated with the city. Our housing looks like the other housing in our neighborhood. It's not flashy and new and sticks out like a sore thumb. We kind of adopted a modern spin on craftsman architecture to fit within the historic fabric. When you come up on a co-housing for the first time, you're kind of surprised how small and like seamless it fits in. It's not like a tower, We live in a neighborhood that has a lot of multifamily housing. In fact, our land was designated multifamily, so we didn't have to do a zone change in order to build our project. So I think there's in cities that aren't like super hot real estate markets or super expensive cities is a great place to build co-housing.
After all these years, is it just working? Like it's safe and it's private, but also you get to partake in all the businesses nearby.
Yeah, we live 3 blocks from a really cute neighborhood business district called the Perry District. I think you saw that in our little short promo video where we're next to restaurants and we have a farmer's market that happens every Thursday in the park that's 3 blocks away. So it is a pretty wholesome environment in that regard. We have a world-class bakery 2 blocks from our house.
Yeah, how's it working? Like you did this great feat of piecing it into the community that's already there, and like how does it feel?
It feels great. I mean, it's like an oasis. I'm not sure I would be living in Spokane if I didn't have a really cool, supportive neighborhood pocket in which to raise my family. Just the thoughtfulness of neighbors is really touching to me. It's been healing to live here, honestly. It gave my husband and I the space to really reorient around what was most important in our lives and to come to a different place with how we do work, that we're no longer working to survive in the same way that we were when we moved into the community. It's opened up a lot of possibilities for how people travel even. Like my mother left this morning to go to Japan with one of our co-housing neighbors and several other people who live here, and they're all going to Japan together. And, Susan speaks fluent Japanese and knows all the best places to go. And so they planned this 2-week trip, and it's not a corporate, tourist package or something like that. Like they're really going to get to have an immersive experience in Japanese with a native speaker who was also their neighbor, and they can buy packages together that get them a better deal even while they're traveling, So yeah, co-housing life is more abundant, and people love to trade skills with each other. I'm learning how to sew from my neighbor Pat, for example, and Jerry is a winemaker, and I'd like to learn how to make crabapple wine with the produce from our garden. There's always something to do and something to improve around here, and it's really just bears a lot of reward over time.
Like I like the idea of refabricating something historical, like in Sacramento, or the region, a neighboring town or something. And there's actually a lot of work happening right now downtown, that there's these old warehouses that they're repurposing as like an open market, which is a really cool prospect, and then like a concert venue will be on the end of it. I just learned about that, but like they should do a co-housing like 2 blocks over, and then like the market and the co-housing would just be so lucrative.
It's a project in Oakland, California called Swan's Market Co-housing, which is exactly that kind of a retrofit project. They might check out, you might Google search Swan's Market Co-housing in Oakland, and they did a beautiful job with that. And it's in the heart of downtown Oakland. And I visited, and but it feels like they have an interior courtyard that's very private, and it fits into the space nicely.
What are some upsets that you face in co-housing or challenges? What happens and how is it worked out, and what do you come up against as a person but also as a community?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges of community, which we knew was going to likely be the case going into it, is that some people discover that co-housing isn't for them after all. And they realized that they had different goals for the community than the vast majority of the rest of the neighbors. For example, they might have a different calculation around their risk tolerance, for example. So some people are just inherently have a need for more control than others. And if your need for control is so tightly held that you cannot compromise and be flexible, and you realize that other people don't have the same low tolerance for risk that you do, you might not feel comfortable living in co-housing, and you might need to transition out. And so we did have one household that decided to renovate their old home and move back into it. And everyone is at peace with that decision. We realize it's best for them, it's best for us, and there's no hard feelings. We just realize there's just a difference of vision for how to live together. So, all's well that ends well. But some people have to go through a personal development journey to realize what their real needs are. And you don't know until you try something new. But for the vast majority of us, it's, everyone has loved what they bought into. And the only reason people typically move out is because they have a partner that lives elsewhere who can't move due to jobs or family or whatever. And then they get serious and they get in a marriage kind of way, and then they move closer to where their other partner needs to be. That's typically why people leave the community, which is a great reason to leave the community.
Is there anything exciting to you coming up, or just a co-housing item that excites you that we didn't get to touch on?
I'm really excited for the growing season in our garden this year. We split our acreage up into 26 areas where each area has 1 or 2 stewards, and those stewards are supported by helpers. And we've got a lot of ambitious plans for what our different gardens are going to be doing this year. I'm also excited to explore the creation of a Friends of Haystack Heights co-housing program so we can more formally involve people from the broader city in our community.
Well, thanks, Mariah, for all of your time on this show today, and I really appreciate the insights that you've shared. And I hope to stay in touch more and learn more about co-housing. But for now, we have a great episode to share with the audience, so I really appreciate you being on it.
Sounds great. I can't wait to see it. Thanks, Chris. Yep. Bye.